I'm not an anti-SEO. I'm kind of a guy. But the way SEO gets sold today, I'm willing to bet that at least two-thirds of the SEO dollars that are spent are ineffective and wasted.
Welcome to It Comes Down to This. Today's guest is Atul Minocha, a former Fortune 50 marketing exec turned fractional CMO who now helps CEOs cut through the noise and get real results. I've invited Atul on the show because his bold perspective on what's broken in marketing and how to fix it has hit a nerve. He's the author of Lies, Damn Lies, and Marketing. And in this episode, we talk about fake ROI, wasted SEO budgets, random acts of marketing, and the difference between big and small marketing, and why pricing should never be left to your CFO. In today's episode, it comes down to this. Most marketing doesn't fail because of bad execution. It fails because there was no strategy to begin with. Welcome to The Marketer. It's great to have you back. The Marketer is a show for marketers, for business leaders, and sales leaders now. So traditionally, the show has been based and centered around marketing topics and strategies to help marketers be better marketers. And with some reviews that we've gotten from last season, I've decided to include sales as well. So you have multiple options for this season on The Marketer to catch some real marketing strategies as well as some sales strategies because they go hand in hand. But today, I have a fantastic guest with us. Atul, welcome to The Marketer.
Thank you. Thanks, Marty.
It is fantastic to have you. When I saw your book, I knew I had to have you on your show or on the show.
So, the title gets you, right?
It is a fantastic title. I really appreciate it. So can you tell me what inspired you to write Lies, Damn Lies, and Marketing? What myths were you aiming to bust with that when you decided to write it?
So I'll tell you what inspired me to write this book. If I can give you a little bit of my own background, I studied engineering. I wanted to be an engineer, automotive engineer. But as I mentioned in my introduction to the book, I actually got dragged into marketing. Marketing was not a chosen career for me, but I was forced into marketing for a short period of time. And of course, long story short, that short period of time has become a lifetime because I fell in love with marketing. I realized that all the misperceptions I had about marketing and sales, frankly, they were wrong. I realized that marketing, the education that I had received as an engineer could be a very useful part of marketing. And I can really add value within marketing. And I realized that marketing is a lot of fun. So I made a career in marketing. I've never worked as an engineer even for a single day, even though I trained with a lot of love and affection for engineering. So for the first 25 years or so, I spent my time as a traditional marketer in traditional companies, big name companies, Fortune 50 companies like Toyota, Eastman Kodak, Allied Signal, Honeywell, Cummins Engine Company, and the like. And, progressively sort of senior positions during my career. And I was dealing with professional marketeers. I was dealing with professionals. And then I switched from corporate career to fractional CMO consulting, basically taking my experience and knowledge to small to mid-sized company CEOs. And that's where I discovered there was a significant response difference between what I was experiencing as a corporate marketeer and what I was experiencing as a small to medium-sized businesses marketeer. And what I discovered, the big difference was that most CEOs, maybe 95%, maybe even almost 100%. I mean, I'm only saying almost 100% because just to keep myself safe, but I can probably say 100%. They've all had bad experiences with marketing. All of them have a perception that marketing doesn't work, or even if it works, we don't know what works. It's a money pit. Keep throwing money and marketing cannot tell me what's working, what's not working. It sounds good. It looks good. I can see a good website. I can appreciate the colors. I feel good about that. But is it actually driving business? I have no idea. Nobody has been able to answer that. And that was hugely different from my experience in the corporate world. So this is over the last 12 years that I've been doing this with chief outsiders. And this wasn't an exception. The first time I experienced that, I felt, okay, maybe it's just this person. But I kept experiencing that. So then I realized, and then I started keeping notes as to why is it? Why is it that these highly educated people, highly successful people, they have a different view and different experience with marketing than my own experience has been? I started digging deeper into it, and I started making a list of potential causes for why they have been frustrated. What led them to that point? And I started giving a talk. You've heard of a group called Vistage. So I created a talk that I would go to different Vistage groups or different business leaders. And my talk actually was called How CMOs Take CEOs for a Ride. So it was a tongue-in-cheek kind of a thing as to, because the summary of all this was that what did I find in my research, in my sort of experiential research? What I found was that there are two kinds of mistakes that lead to this bad taste in the CEO's mind. One is CMOs or marketeers or marketing agencies willfully, almost knowingly, will make promises that they should know better that they cannot keep. So they make promises, and then 3 months later, 1 year later, it fails as it was designed to. And so they make those promises either to keep the job or win a business or whatever that might be. The other category of reasons was that uh, many marketeers probably didn't learn the right tools, or they were overusing certain things, so in other words, they didn't quite understand how things really work. So it wasn't a willful misrepresentation, but it was misrepresentation. So in other words, promises were made, wrong things were done, not knowingly, but unwittingly. Either way, the result is the same. It leaves the CEO with a bad taste of mind in the mouth. So fast forward this. So my list is growing. My PowerPoint slides are growing because every 3-4 months I would discover something new to add. And then COVID happened. So when COVID happened, I said, you know what? I'm going to be locked up in my house. Maybe I should put an end to this, keep building this PowerPoint deck and create a book. So that's what got me to write the book. And of course, the publisher helped me revise the title to Lies, Damn Lies, and Marketing.
I think both titles that you mentioned are actually quite brilliant.
Yeah, no, I like them both. Yeah, but yeah, the book is now called Lies, Damn Lies, and Marketing.
It's great hooks, but yeah, I love. Not only do I love the title, but I love the graphic that you guys created for the book. I think it's just fantastic.
Give credit to the publisher, and they came back with like 10 options, and this one was like, yeah, this is it.
So I'd like to ask a couple of questions about what you said. When marketing company, first of all, I agree with everything that you said, and I've experienced the same. When marketing companies deal at the smaller level, let's say, you're a startup to small companies, maybe 1 to 100 employees, something like that. What are the pressures on marketing companies to perform? Are there different pressures at that level than there is at the Fortune 500 level due to I don't know, maybe it's budget or something? And is there more pressure on the marketing company at that lower level that they have to produce, and that production needs to be in sales, hard sales, or something like that? Or what have you found have you found a common denominator in their failure?
Yeah. So I don't think I'm in the best position to sort of give you a finessed answer in the sense that are the pressures greater when you're selling to Fortune 500 versus small to medium size. And part of the reason I'm hesitant to answer that question is I'm also of the view that when you have a toothache, that's the worst toothache. You tell me that you have a toothache, how bad can it be? But once I have it, that's the worst. Right? So in other words, if you are an agency serving small to mid-sized company, I'm not the one to tell you that, hey, the bigger guys have bigger problems, because that won't mean much to you because you are where you are and your problem is what you're dealing with, right? So That to me is, I'm sidetracking that question for a reason, but I'm going to answer your question in a different way. So I think the bigger question is that I'm of the view that regardless of your pain, regardless of whether you are worse off than or better off than the other guy, regardless of that, I think there has to be a minimum level of professionalism that should stop you from doing things that you should not do. So again, if you're ignorant, I'm okay with that. If you make a promise because you were not aware of something, I can live with that because not everybody knows everything, right? But if you know something and then you willfully make a promise, that to me doesn't matter whether you're a small agency or a big agency or your clients are this or that, that should not be happening.
Can you give me an example or two of what you've experienced in agencies making promises that they just simply can't keep?
Oh, my book is so full of them. Uh, so, I'll give you a few. So, one example, since we're talking about agencies, and this, I'll give you two examples. One I see a lot of even today, maybe even more so now than 5 years ago. The other one, I'm not seeing as much. So maybe things have improved. SEO. So I'm not an anti SEO. I'm kind of a guy. But the way SEO gets sold today, I'm willing to bet that at least two-thirds of the SEO dollars that are spent, not half, two-thirds, maybe even more, are ineffective and wasted. And I would even suggest that maybe two-thirds of the companies that are spending, regardless of the dollars, two-thirds of the companies that are spending money on SEO and they're putting it as their number one marketing thing to do, it probably shouldn't be on their top 10 list, or at least not, definitely not in the top 5 list, because there are other things that probably can give them better results than SEO. Again, I'm not an anti-SEO guy. Many of my clients, I encourage them to do SEO, but again, it depends on what the situation is and what are the chances of it making a difference and how it should be done. That's the other level. I mean, how you do SEO, I think makes a lot of difference. So that's one example. The one that I'm not seeing as much of, but I used to see, say about 5 years ago, is that I would see many clients get offers. In fact, I would get offers through LinkedIn. Hey, we can get you 1,000 more likes on your Twitter account, or on your this or that. So in other words, they were peddling likes or equivalent of likes. And I have a full chapter on that. That stay away from that. I mean, there's SEO. Yes, you can do good SEO and bad SEO, but there is no good way to justify buying likes. So,
No, I totally agree. And I actually have quite a bit of experience in both of those areas. And, the SEO side of things, in my experience, is already a rigged game. Search, the Google is in the business for making money. And the top companies that are going to show up and stuff, those positions are locked in. You're not superseding those positions on SEO. So basically, what a smaller company is competing for, and I'd love your thoughts on this too, is what smaller companies are competing for is the lower, positions, which if you're past your top 3 to 5, you're not there anyway. So because nobody goes past first page on a search. Would you agree with that?
totally. I totally would agree with that. In fact, to give you an example around that, so I've worked with many software companies, and I was having a conversation just yesterday with another software company. Let's call it somewhere between $10 to $20 million in revenue, and even by the CEO's admission, and I actually know that business reasonably well. So we both agreed on this part that when we said, okay, asking the question is who is your competitor, and hoping that you'll get a list of 5 companies, it's a wrong question to ask, because if you're a $10 to $20 million software company, you have hundreds of thousands of competitors. So you may be able to name five, but when you talk to your customers, they're not the same five they are seeing as competitors. So in other words, your competitors are faceless and nameless. Why? Because there's so many of them. Okay. Now everybody's trying to get up on the SERP. How many how many will make the top 10? Top 10 will have only 10. You know?
Well, that's exactly right. And you're also dealing with the top four, sometimes five being sponsored ads.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah.
and as far as the likes and everything goes, those are all bot driven.
Yeah.
There's,
And that's what makes them bad.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I do a lot on LinkedIn, as you know, and you can go out and you can buy likes, you can buy comments. They're all AI bot driven, kind of fabricated things. And the thing of it is that algorithms get more sophisticated year by year. So as an algorithm starts to see something that is continually moving a post or a page up where it shouldn't be, they're going to adjust the algorithm for that, and you will no longer be able to do that in a short time. So that's why, all of these practices and stuff like that typically are months to many months behind because the algorithm's already caught up and it's now changed. So, Atul, let's talk about CEOs a little bit, and let's talk about how CEOs can better align marketing efforts with overall business strategy. Can you give me a sense for that and what you talk about in your book?
Yeah. That's an excellent question. And it touches upon something that is core to what we at Chief Outsiders believe in. And I've sort of believed in that even in my corporate life. Uh, so even as a corporate marketeer, my goal was never to win a marketing award or an advertising award or this or that. I always thought that marketing's role is to serve the business. So, what is the business goal? And marketing is just one set of tools, just like sales is one set of tools, HR is another set of tools, operations is another set of tools, engineering is another set of tools. All of us bring our own subject matter expertise, different functional expertise, solving or serving the higher business objective. So, what is the business objective? That's where I would start from instead of saying what is the marketing objective. So, once I know what the business objective is, then we say, okay, what can marketing do to serve that? Marketing may not be able to do everything in that business objective, but what part of that business objective can be served by great marketing? Once you get to that level, then, and this is the part that my book starts talking about what we call big M marketing and small M marketing. So the big M marketing is sort of the strategy, finding out which customer you should be targeting, what should be your messaging, what should be your positioning, what personas are you going to be pursuing, what your pricing strategy is. So that's the big M stuff. And the small M stuff is the more visible part of marketing. So when we and then it's actually the more expensive part of marketing. So the goal, the way I would answer that for a CEO is give me the business objective, make sure, with no exceptions, make sure that you spend enough time and money doing bigger marketing. Because the problem with many CEOs, one of the problems, and this is where the blame lies with them when they get frustrated, is there's all of us are type A people. All of us want results yesterday. So they say, you know what? I'll spend time on strategy, but let me first get me five more leads. Let me first close five more deals. So in other words, they throw money at those smaller marketing things without figuring out the strategy. And then they get frustrated that I did that, I went here, my marketing guy said, we run this campaign, and I did that, and 5 months later, nothing came out of it. My usual question is, did you spend any time figuring out if that was the right thing to do? Did you figure out who is your ideal customer? Are your ideal customers actually listening to or watching those channels, or are they spending time on those channels where you're advertising? And if you haven't done that research, if you haven't answered those questions, Throwing money on LinkedIn, throwing money on Facebook, throwing money on Instagram is literally throwing spaghetti on the wall. So, business goal, big M marketing, small M marketing. And I mentioned that most of the time and most of the money is spent on small M marketing, and that's really true. I would say if your total marketing budget is $200,000, only 10 to 15% will go into big M, and 85% will go into small M. But unfortunately, but very importantly, you cannot say, I'll do small M first and then I'll get to big M when I have time. The only thing you get if you do that is you're guaranteeing that your money is going to be wasted. So you have to spend the first 10, 15% of your dollars on doing the big M. And usually it takes 2, 3, 4 months, no more than that. And then run your program for tactical marketing, which we call small M marketing.
So for those that are listening to the show, let's say we're talking about, there's some business leaders listening to this show, whether they're CEOs, owners, founders. Can you just walk through the difference between bigger marketing initiatives and what would be smaller marketing initiatives, and what the difference there is so that they can understand those?
I mean, the simplest thing that I can say is that things that you usually might associate with strategy, those, I mean, I'm doing it loosely, right? Um, those are what I would call big M. But let me not be so loose. Let me actually refer to the chart that I have in the book. Okay, so um, so let's see. So the big M marketing would consist of what we would call gathering insights from customers, insights from competitors, insights about the company. It'll include segmentation. How do you segment the market? What segments do you go to? How do you? What are the customer profiles in there? Which ones are you choosing to call as your ideal customer profile? What what are going to be your points of differentiation? Are you a Me Too product? Did I sell another computer? Or you have some differentiation. Again, you don't have to be Apple to do that. You can be a Windows player and you can still have a differentiation in that. What's going to be your overall pricing strategy? This is not the point where you'll do the number that I'm going to put a sticker of $222, but what is your overall strategy? And what's your messaging around that? So all of that is what I would call big M marketing. None of it or most of it is not visible. So if you are a customer, you don't get to see somebody's company strategy. I mean, you may be able to connect the dots if you're a professional marketer that this looks like that's their strategy. But Apple doesn't publish or no company publishes that this is our marketing strategy. They'll say, okay, we are going to this trade show. You'll see them at a trade show. You'll see their ads on some channels. You'll see some ads on a different channel or not see their ads. And so I mean, so the visible part of marketing, with very few exceptions, is the small M marketing. So trade shows, SEO, advertising, uh, name it, PR, all of those are small M marketing. And actually within small M marketing also, in the book, I make a distinction. There are certain elements of website. Website is a big one, right? Most visible. There's some elements of the small M marketing which give you quick results. You do it today, people will notice it right away. But you lose their value, you lose their charm. And then there are some which you start doing today, but you won't notice anything for a year. I'll give you an example of each. You change your website, you change your logo, people will notice it right away. And either they'll like it, hate it, love it, whatever. But they will notice it. But even if they love it, 6 months later, a year later, they're not going to give you more business because, oh, I love their logo what they changed a year ago. But that time it's a given. I mean, they may love it, but now it's a given. SEO is on the other side. If you start doing SEO, and I'm preaching to the choir here, you know it better than I do. You start doing SEO, even when done well, it takes 6, 9 months before you start seeing results. So you cannot say I spent 3 months of $10,000 each in each month and nothing's happened. No, if you commit to SEO, you better commit for 9 months. So even in small M, quick results, not long lasting, or slow results but longer lasting.
Now, do you feel that that is the same regardless of the product or service. Like, can it? I would say in the B2B space, any marketing effort, you're going to be looking at 6 to 9 months before you're going to really start evaluating effectiveness across the board. I don't care what it is. In with a product or a widget that you have to sell, now that's a different story. You can start to see immediate results based on maybe an ad you can run, something like that. Do you differentiate between the two?
Yeah, there is a difference, but I think, and I agree with you 100% that no marketing effort will actually start giving you the bottom line results right away. I mean, maybe pricing a little bit. If you change the price, I think it will make a difference uh, in some cases. And maybe like if you change the price, if you ran a 2-for-1 promotion on Big Macs, and then you'll see a difference, right? Um, but in general, I think the point that you're mentioning, a lot of that is affected or is influenced by what is the sales cycle. So if your sales cycle is 18 months, guess what? Let's say that you do 6 months of marketing, the impact of that is not delayed because marketing is not having an impact, but your selling cycle, by the time you actually reel in the fish, that's 18 months. So you will not really be able to measure anything for, I don't know, 2 years.
I'm kind of changing the game on you a little bit from what we were talking about, because I really think this is important for people to hear, especially your smaller companies up to maybe your small to mid-sized companies. What you said right there is very profound. A year to 2 years should be an expectation. Yet, going back to what we said at the beginning of the show, that's why I wanted to start pressing you on that a little bit, because I think a lot of pressure is put on internal marketing teams and any other marketing companies that come into the picture there by leadership, the CEO specifically, because they want to see immediate results from that because they're under the pressure of revenue production, right? So, how do you deal with that when you, as a fractional marketing leader coming into a company, do you focus on that, the big marketing problems and really get in with the leadership team and say, look, you know, let me set proper expectations for you and help you understand what you need to do to be effective so that when you get down into these smaller things that I understand you want to get on right away and you want to see results from, that you can see results from that 3 months from now or whatever, you can start to see as we start to implement some of these bigger marketing strategies, then those can come into play. But you're still looking at 1 to 2 years, before you're really going to be evaluating real and honest business growth here.
So I want to make sure that your listeners are not. I want to underscore a certain point here. When you say you're going to wait 1 to 2 years, 1 to 3 years, I don't want people to think, oh gosh, for 1 year, meaning I will have no idea whether we're on the right track or not. That's not true. Many things you will discover in week 3. In other words, if you're a CEO and you are buying what Monty, you and I are discussing, I want them to also hear from me that you don't have to wait a full year before you start feeling warm and fuzzy. You will start feeling warm and fuzzy, but you're not going to get the full impact of everything that we are planning to do in the first 6 months. Many of them are going to take some time. But there's another aspect to this, which is that, and you started your question with that theme about the pressure that you get if you're a marketer, whether you're an in-house marketer or a fractional CMO or an agency. So I think all of us sort of feel the similar pressure from the decision maker, let's say the CEO who holds the paycheck, that we have to show results, and that not just results, we have to show measurable results. In other words, show me the ROI. What's the ROI? If you're asking me to spend $100,000 on this program, what am I going to get? And then I'm going to measure it. This is what you said. Am I actually getting it or not? So, I'm going to go back to the first question you asked. How did the book come about? The first chapter of the book, or the first chapter that I kind of formulated, or the first slide that I formulated, is actually in chapter 14 in the book. So when we were laying out the book, it didn't make the first chapter for good reasons. So it ends up as a chapter 14. And that chapter is called Fake ROI. So what is fake ROI? And in the book, I give an example where when the marketer is put some pressure, give me the ROI. What's the ROI? Before I approve it, show me the ROI. Give me an Excel. A smart marketer, or even halfway smart marketer, can actually show whatever ROI you want to see. The point I'm making, again, I'm not arguing against ROI. What I'm arguing against is fake ROI. And I'm showing in the book that it's relatively easy to come up with fake numbers to get approval, and which a good marketeer will never do. Why? Because you can fool somebody only so many times. So how do we handle that? Many a time, not always, but many a time, there are certain projects that you have to do which have to be done. You'll never find the ROI. I'll give you an example. You drive from San Francisco to San Jose, and I think this applies to other cities as well. And it's a 50-mile ride, an hour and a half on a business day, and that 50 miles probably has 18 huge billboards by Apple. Okay, 18 one way, 18 the other way. And I bet
Right.
they cost millions,
Yeah.
tens of millions of dollars. And they've had those for years. And most of them actually are used for advertising iPhones, not Macs. Some of them may be for Macs, some of them for watches once in a while, but 90% of them are for iPhones. Can the guy in charge of billboards in Apple, tell Tim Cook that we sold so many more iPhones because of these billboards?
No.
No. So is Tim Cook giving that person a free hand because I love this person? We are so rich. You want to spend $100 million on billboards? Sure, doesn't matter. Or the marketeer who's responsible for this has convinced Tim Cook with the following logic: that look, the traffic is getting tighter and tighter. It used to take 45 minutes. Now it takes an hour and a half. You're getting more eyeballs. And it actually helps to reinforce the image that we have. And then I'll go even a step further. So when you see those billboards advertising iPhone, they are, one of the common things about advertising is that users will say, if I showed, let's say, a Coca-Cola ad to somebody who is already drinking Coca-Cola, you can argue that that's a wasted ad. The guy's already drinking Coca-Cola. He's not going to grab another Coke while he's still drinking. But Apple is so smart. They advertise iPhones by showing shot on the iPhone. Customer pictures that customers have taken, they're displaying that. So why is that a smart thing? Why? Because if I'm driving and I'm looking at that and I'm already an iPhone user, so in other words, I don't need to be convinced to buy an iPhone. But when I see that, I say, wow, I didn't know my phone can take a picture like that. Wow, I'd better spend some time learning about that. What is that doing? More engagement with an existing product. More engagement means the next time I'm more likely to still buy an iPhone because now I know how to use my iPhone. If I'm a Samsung user and I see that, I say, I never got a picture like that on Samsung. Maybe next time I should get an iPhone. So what I'm saying is that they're so smart that they are actually reaching, it's a good thing that they're reaching both Samsung users and iPhone users because it's having a positive impact on both. And none of it is measurable as an ROI.
Yes.
So if Tim Cook was saying no ROI, no approval, they would have made a mistake.
I think that's one of the primary differences between CEOs from companies like Apple and CEOs of companies that have like 25 employees.
But there's no reason why the CEO with 25 employees cannot learn.
Exactly right.
I mean, I don't think Tim Cook is is that much smarter than many of the 25 employee CEOs that I know.
No, I would completely agree with you. In fact, I think there's some brilliant business leaders, with small businesses that do so much more with so much less. But that notion of data, let's talk about that a little bit, because you provided a fantastic example of where the data in a marketing strategy cannot necessarily be proven, but it is yet still a brilliant marketing strategy that they do all over the place by Apple. Data can also be used or not. You talk about fake ROI. I think there's a lot of fake data too. And maybe it's not fake data, but it can be used to create maybe fake strategies, right? Where, coming back to the marketing company that says, oh, yeah, we can promise all this. And here's some data, by the way. Look at that shiny object over there. Now give us the dollars. And, a year later, nothing. The data doesn't prove out. Have you experienced that? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, before there was lies, damn lies, and marketing, there was lies, damn lies, and statistics. You remember? So I mean,
Yeah.
that's the original phraseology. I mean, if you sort of say, where did this phrase come from? It came from lies, damn lies, and statistics. So we as a society have experienced lies, damn lies, and statistics for over 100 years. Okay. So yes, they I won't even get into fake data. In other words, data that's manufactured. So that's a different story. But it's real data. But data can be misused. You can have over reliance on data. When data is not capable of giving you some information, but you say, if I don't have data, I don't believe anything. I'll give you an anecdote, and I'm going to lean on somebody who is way bigger than me in fame and intelligence and almost any other metric, and that's Jeff Bezos. So I don't think anybody will mistake Jeff Bezos as a philosopher king or loosey goosey liberal arts guy. I mean,
I don't think so.
yeah. So he's a hardcore data. I mean, even if you don't know
You're
Jeff
right.
Bezos, you'll probably still place him in the data side of things, and you'd be right, right?
Right.
If you Google on this aspect, and you'll find multiple sources. He has said this in his annual reports. He has said this in podcasts. He has said this in interviews. He has said this in media. So there's enough evidence that, and not just he said it back in 2018 or something. He says it often enough. He says, and I'm paraphrasing him because he obviously uses different words and different times. But he says when he discovers that somebody has done the data analysis and the data analysis does not match with his instinct or gut feel, he doesn't say, oh, data versus gut, I'll go with data. He doesn't say that. On the contrary, he'll challenge the data person, share where his instinct is, and say, go back and double check. Are you using the right data? Are you analyzing it properly? Are you maybe not using enough data? Are you using too much data in the sense that the real fact is now clouded by this average of other things? So he'll share his gut, but he'll use that gut to challenge the data. So in other words, for him, it's not an easy, oh, data versus gut, data always wins. No, he has a lot of instinct, a lot of faith in his gut, and he uses that to make sure that the data gets sharpened. That is how it should be done. It's not an easier data versus gut. I always choose data. No. I mean, when you have 20, 30, 40 years of experience, each second is a data point, and your instinct and gut is formed with that data.
I think it's fantastic. I would totally agree. Um, let's talk about pricing a little bit, because I know that in your book, um, you emphasize that pricing is about more than numbers. It's tied to branding and positioning. And so, How can CEOs use pricing as a strategic advantage?
Few things I'll say about pricing. One, if you think of the sort of the old model of marketing, and I say old not because it's not relevant today, but people have come up with other variations. I still think it's a valid framework, which is the four P's of marketing. Product, price, position, promotion, kind of thing. So of those four P's, and they're all important, right? As a marketer, you cannot say it's like having four kids. I love them all. But pricing is unique in one sense, and that is that pricing has the most direct effect on profitability. So you can do better positioning, you can do better promotion, you can do a better product. It'll have an impact on the bottom line. Sure. I mean, if Apple improve their product, it'll impact their bottom line, but it's happened over time. But if they go from 999 cell phone to 799 cell phone, whether whether the sales volume will compensate for the lower unit price or not, that's a different math that we can do. But it'll have an immediate effect. They make the change tonight at 6 p.m., sales will be affected tomorrow. Product change, it'll take some time. So pricing is the lever, which is almost like it's not a rope, it's a stick. You pull, it'll pull, you're not pushing against a rope or anything like that. So that's sort of one thing I would say. The other thing is what you alluded to in your question. One of the common mistakes CEOs make is that they don't realize that those four P's have a strong interrelationship. And they probably understand positioning, product, and place that link, but pricing they say, that's a numbers thing. But actually, it is a numbers thing. So, but price has a significant effect on positioning, and vice versa. Positioning has a significant effect on pricing, and that is why I make the point that pricing should be handled by marketing. Why? Because they're handling the other three P's, and you cannot have a positioning that suggests premium. I'm an exclusive premium product, and not have price reflecting that, or vice versa.
How do you suggest to a CEO, let's say they've got a service, let's say it's a service oriented business, and they've got competitors out there, obviously. They know kind of generally around what the market is or what their competitors are pricing things at. How do you address the topic of pricing with a CEO that says, "Oh, I just want to undercut. I just want to be a dollar or two under my competitors, or I want to be priced at the bottom, thinking that well, that's going to lead to more sales, and I'm going to outcompete my competitors."
There's actually it's not a complicated math to figure out that if I lower the price by a certain amount, how many more units do I need to sell to even stay where I am in profitability? So if you're going to if you're going to undercut the competition, the assumption is by undercutting I'll gain some sales. But my assumption is that by undercutting, you're also reducing your unit margin. So is the loss of unit margin going to be more than compensated by the extra units that you will sell with a smaller margin? And if the answer to that is yes, you will, then do it every day. I'm not going to stop them. In fact, I'm going to encourage them to do it because that's the right strategy. So, but do not make this simple assumption without doing the math that just because I'll get more business, I'll make more money. Because you can get more business and you go out of business faster because now you're losing money on every one of them. So again, I'm not always for raise the prices, but I'm always for doing the math and challenging each other within the company to make sure that we've looked at everything, and then make sure that whatever change you're making on price is also reflected in how you're messaging and positioning and all that. So in other words, it's a holistic approach. And once you're convinced of that, do it. Raise the price or lower the price. They're both equally good depending on data, actually.
As a fractional marketing leader, coming in and working with various different companies, I know you face all kinds of different you know, hurdles that companies need to overcome. Um, what do you see? Have you found that there's a pretty significant divide when you're coming into companies between the marketing teams and the marketing effort and the sales team and the sales effort and the communication between the two, and their alignment in working together?
By and large, there are more cases where the alignment should be and can be improved. There are very few cases that come to mind where I would say that's a role model relationship. So yeah, by and large, sales and marketing, they end up, they all say the same thing, that yeah, we need to work together and we promise to work together, and we go out for lunch together and all that. But yeah, there's always some disconnect. But I would even argue that some disconnect actually, or some misalignment, not misalignment is the wrong word, but some disconnect is perhaps healthy, um, as part of challenging each other, and because I mean they are two different roles, they are two different. Uh, Again, if we align it to the business objective, we are all serving the business objective. But how we use the tool, marketing tool versus a sales tool, those could be different. So yeah, but there are more examples of where improvement should be made.
I'd like to maybe have you give a couple of thoughts as we wrap up here. If you could give CEOs just one piece of advice to avoid I'm sorry, to avoid failing or marketing hype, what would you advise?
Probably the biggest thing, actually, I'll give you two. You asked one, I'll give you two. The biggest thing they can do, and I think 90% of the CEOs will benefit from this. The 10 who won't is because they're already doing it. So everybody will benefit. The first thing I would say is invest in big M marketing. So in other words, check your type A, I need this yesterday thing in your own interest, not for me, but in your own interest. Because I again, in a $200,000 annual budget, I don't want you to waste $160,000. So what I'm asking you to do, spend the 40,000 upfront so that the 160 can be better spent. So that's number one advice, which will apply to 90%. The 10% for whom this is not meant, because they're already doing it. So another piece of advice that 100% of the CEOs will benefit from, because no one is doing it, or even if they agree with it, they intend to not they intend to do it, but they don't do it, and that is to avoid random acts of marketing. So in the enthusiasm to drive sales, they keep putting pressure on their sales and marketing teams. What else can you think of? Monday morning, let's meet. Our sales are slipping. Our MQLs have gone down. What else can we do? And then in the meeting room, two new ideas will come up and say, yeah, let's do it. Fast forward 5 months. Now you've added six more programs with no attribution, no ROI, maybe some fake ROI thrown in every now and then, and now you're doing different things. So 100% of the CEOs can benefit from avoiding random acts of marketing, by which what I mean is make sure that whatever you're doing, they're coordinated, they are linked to each other, as opposed to sort of, I thought of it today, so I'm going to do it tomorrow.
That's both excellent pieces of advice. I actually like that second one just because there's so many people, so
That's
many
what
business leaders.
that one, even the best CEO falls guilty at some stage,
It's absolutely the truth. Absolutely
Yeah.
the truth. You have delivered, my friend. Thank you
Thank
for
you. Thanks
such
for the opportunity.
excellent insights. So, everybody that's listening and watching, please check in our description for links to Atul's book. It is fantastic. Definitely pick a copy of that up for yourself. Atul, really a pleasure to have you on the show. I look forward to hearing more from you. What's next?
uh, in terms of books, there are uh, two on the burner, so to speak. And the problem is that because there are two on the burner, none of them is actually getting cooked at this time. But there are two on the burner, and I can tell you what they are about. One is on, again, the working title for that. It's not, we haven't gone to the stage where we're zeroing in on the exact title, but this could well be the real title, is Customer Matters. So it's about customer satisfaction, what role customer can play in making a business successful. And I in the book, I also talk about how customer is not just somebody who buys your product. Customer can actually help you design your product or your service. So in other words, it's a sort of a cradle to grave application of customer. So that's why it's Customer Matters. Um, the second book is triggered off of another favorite book of mine called Good to Great. You see over here by Tim Collins, which is about, I think, came out about 25 years ago, and it's still one of my favorite books. But I also happen to believe that there are certain things in the book, I wouldn't say they're wrong, but they are incomplete. So I'm writing a book on what did Jim miss at that point in time, and I'm sharing my experience learning as to how what he's promoting over there, how those thoughts can be improved further. And specifically, I'm talking about the hedgehog concept. So my whole book is on revising how we look at the hedgehog concept, the fox and the hedgehog. So that's my second book.
Very, very good. I will be looking forward to reading those for sure and hearing your insights. Thank you again for being on the show. Until next time, we'll talk again.
Thank you.